of the week's entertainment news. And just getting straight into it, we want to get into our discussion today. Remember, it's International Men's Day today, and we're having a special conversation just celebrating our men and their special contribution that they make to the society. And I'm joined via Zoom by Simon Mbevi, who is the founder and executive director, Transform Nations. Good evening, Simon, and many thanks for staying with us here, waiting for this conversation. It's good to see you, and happy International Men's Day to you yourself. Maybe as a beginning, just to get to know you very briefly, if you can talk to us about what Transform Nations is and what it does, very briefly, Simon.
Well, thank you, and good evening again, and happy International Men's Day to all the men out there. So Transform Nations, we do programs, we equip people so that they may be able to transform their area of influence, leaders at home. So we have programs that equip the men, and Man Enough is foremost one. We do programs for parents, so we have intentional mom and intentional dad. We also do programs for the youth, boys and girls as well, and for the ladies. So really the entire family. We also focus on leadership, and we focus on community change. So we're doing these programs in several nations, and it's just been a pleasure to work, especially with the men and the boys in this season.
Fantastic, and you're the right guy to have this conversation with today as we speak about Men's Day. And the theme this year, Simon, is focusing on gender relations and how best to foster relationships between men and women. And of course, this is in various spheres, from households to the workplaces to our friends. And when we talk about that, talking about relations between men and women, what are some of the outstanding things that you think about in your programs when you talk to men and that come out in our society today, particularly in the context of Kenya, with regard to the relationships of men and women?
Well, for sure, there's been various tensions between the two gender. And of course, one of them is we have moved on from the traditional society and role allocation, where women were basically at home and played their role there a lot more. And that has changed a lot. We have also moved from the place where men were dominant, as it were, and they were in most of the top positions. A lot has changed. And these social changes, of course, have not been as easy, especially for the men. There are a lot of men who are still struggling with that. There are some who have, and this comes up a lot, who have gotten married to ladies who are earning, or wives who are earning a lot more than them. And that's not easy, you know, just to handle that for some of them. So I think number one, I would say the social changes and what has happened, what has come with that. But number two would be self-awareness. And being able to deal with our issues as men. I think even through this COVID situation, all of us have been stressed, but naturally and out of socialization, women are able to process those things a lot better, reach out to their girlfriends and get to talk through them. Men tend not to do that, maybe because of where we were told big boys don't cry. And so we stuff these things up, and we find ourselves at a place where we are not able to bring those out, and we get into states of lots of stress and depression. And I think you have seen a lot of fights that have happened in homes, and men rising up and hurting their women or their children. Right. Of course, we have had cases where women have done that, but majority of the cases have been by men.
Right.
So men's ability to deal with himself, but also the changes that have been there.
We'll get deeper into the two aspects that you've mentioned. And let's start with the first one of the new world order, so to speak, or the new social order where the relations of men and women are concerned. And this mostly has to do with the advocacy efforts that we've seen over the years to empower the woman. Simon, would you say, because we're seeing a lot of friction and it looks like it's a crisis of identity of the man in this new order of relationships. When we were doing this empowerment of women, would you say that we forgot the place of the man and the re-education of the man, such that this very good thing of empowering women and leveling the playing ground is now seemingly harming the identity of the man?
Yeah, well, that's a very excellent question. I would say, in a sense, there was an assumption, a big assumption, that because the men were considered to be in charge, they were okay. They didn't have lots of issues to deal with. Of course, it was obvious for the lady and for the girl child that they needed the attention, and all of us ran into it, and rightfully so. But in the process, I think the assumption that the man and the boy were okay because they held the social power was not correct. We're now beginning to realize that we left the man at a place stuck in time. And so the men have not been able to deal and come along with the changes that have been there, as well as the women have done that. And if you look around, you will see that for every 10 programs that are there that are targeting the women and the girl child, there are probably going to be 1 or 2 targeting the men and the boys as well. So I think the idea is for us to walk together, to walk forward together, not leave anyone behind. And I'm not blaming the women or the society. I think it's a realization that all of us have a part to play in empowering women and empowering men as well, so that we may walk at the same pace.
Right. So there's no blame games here. The question is, how then do we recalibrate? How do we correct what didn't work in the efforts, in the sense that we have seen relationships are talking back at that advocacy, at that on the changes that have happened over the years? How then do we recalibrate the status? Where does the buck stop? Is it in our homes? Is it in the churches and mosques and religious spaces? Is it in schools? How do we balance this so that this thing, which is intended for good of both man and woman, then is just that?
I would say that it's really everywhere, because we can't say only in churches or only in schools. It's really everywhere where social conversations happen. And I'm very glad to say that a lot is beginning to happen. Right now, there are a lot of corporates, and I've been part of those programs. A lot of corporates who, for a long time, were running female programs, and now they're beginning to run male programs as well. So I'm happy that that's happening. We're seeing this in churches, and it needs to be more in churches and religious institutions, mosques, and everywhere. In schools as well. And I'm so glad that this is beginning to happen, that we have been invited into many schools to talk to the boys and talk to the girls as well, and begin to socialize them in the right way, right from there, and to the parents as well. And so I think what I would say, it needs to be across the society, from the media, social media, schools, everywhere where there is social conversations. We need to talk about this because it's very crucial, the relationship between the men and the women. If it goes well, we are going to be a healthy society. So everywhere. And maybe lastly, I would say about that, I think as we deal with that, we need to look at the crucial issues. And number one is identity. I think a lot of the men and boys struggle with this identity thing. Number two is isolation, and maybe we'll go deeper into it. A lot of men just not having the kind of relationships that would help them become who they're supposed to be. And then incompetence, inability to deal with certain issues, the social skills that are needed by the men and boys to be able to handle the realities of the day.
Right. And just speaking very practically, Simon, if I'm in a situation or a relationship where either from the start or just suddenly the power balance has shifted, and then you find the man who I respect, he's having struggles in the new balance, and maybe even he means well, but it's a new situation. What then do you advise this couple that is faced with this situation of a power imbalance, or a new situation that they have not been taught to think of in this new way? What then do they practically do?
Again, excellent question. And number one, and I think I've met many couples like those who have sat in the office and talked to me. One recent case is where the woman was earning a lot and the man was trying out a business and it wasn't working. And the lady was feeling, this guy is not even trying, so I think I'm out of here. And we had a great conversation that eventually they found a solution. So number one, the two of them need to have a conversation to understand one another. It needs to start with the two of them, so that they zero in to what are the issues there and how can they begin to solve them. Number two, unfortunately, the social structures where conflict resolution happened are not there as much. If they are there like their parents or their friends, then that would be a good place also to take it. But thirdly, is the beauty of coaches and counselors and people that we can visit, and a third party gets to listen and helps them just identify what to do with those issues. But then the other one is what I've seen, a lot of programs that have come up. Man Enough is only one of them, Boys to Men and what we do, but there are many other programs available in town where men are going into and getting to learn some things and coming back and actually saying, my perspectives have really changed. So taking advantage of the programs that are available at work, in churches, and in society generally.
Right, Simon, and I need to let you go, but very briefly, it would be an injustice if I don't ask about the role of the woman in this. So very briefly, even as we come to the realities of the new social order, the new relationship, kind of climate here in Kenya particularly and Africa as a whole, then what is the role of the empowered woman in making the climate better, understanding that we are coming from a changing tradition and all that, and that the intention is to eventually be on the same side and not have friction, then how does the woman approach this situation with wisdom?
I would say several things that need to happen. Number one, I think when a man or woman, it's really a human thing. When someone is celebrated, just like we have days to highlight some of the successes, when a man is celebrated, then they tend to do that a lot more. So let's celebrate our men and see what is in them and celebrate that, because it's going to be repeated a lot more. But number two is encouragement. All of us need encouragement. And when a man is struggling with identity issues or insecurity issues or other kinds of issues, they need encouragement. And women do that very well, when they mean to. So encouragement and support. In some cases, unfortunately, there has been a beating down of that man, telling him off, feeling like you need to walk away from him because he doesn't have his act together. I think we all need to realize these relationships are for our good and even for the good of our children, and work towards building them and hold hands with each other as men and women, because we're not competing, we're complementing, and encourage one another to move forward. So I would say the lady plays a crucial role. When the man begins to feel like I mean nothing to this lady and I'm not celebrated and they see me as useless, then it's just a heavier burden that crushes the man further into the bottom of the pit. But when they encourage, celebrate, nudge them to go for some cause or education, there are a lot of women who have paid the fees for men to come for Man Enough, and later they come and say, I'm so glad I did that. Let's encourage one another and support each other as we move forward to build a great society.
Fantastic. Very, very fantastic place to leave that conversation at. Simon Mbevi is the founder and executive director of Transform Nations. It is a program that runs Man Enough. And thank you very much for that very enlightening discussion on this International Men's Day. And that is where we wrap up today's edition of Friday Briefing. My name is Sharon Momanyi. Our sign language interpreter has been Damian Evans, and the entire team that has made the bulletin possible. We want to say thanks to them and to you too for watching. Have a great weekend. My name is Sharon Momanyi.